Greetings, everyone. I am so excited to be able to share this content with you. It is one of my favorite topics. And so I'm going to start right away with sharing my screen. So here we go. All right. So let me do this first. So come on. There we go. So you have a link to a vocabulary instruction note catcher, and I see that several people have already been in it. And so pretty much everything that's in the presentation, you have links to in the note catcher. You also have a vocabulary instruction interactive workbook. And so when you download it, it will force you to make a copy. So go ahead and make your own copy, and that becomes yours. And we provide this generally because I want you to be able to do some thinking during it. Today, we're going to do a lesson plan for vocabulary instruction, and then you have it. So if you've enjoyed the content, if there's things that you did that you want to peruse later or share with teams, then you have that workbook. So those are the three things that, and then you also have handouts. And the handouts are exactly what the presentation is. And so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. You already have the content. All right, so let's go here. So you've already found out that I'm Marlene Cummings, and I'm a speech language pathologist by training. I'm also an AAC consultant. I was originally an early childhood educator, so I ran classrooms for kids with complex communication needs instead of being their speech pathologist. And so I have a little bit of a different view or a lens that I look at the individuals I serve, because I needed to be very strategic in how I presented content. At that time, I'm old now. What can we say? I had 12 students in a classroom with one parapro or one teacher assistant. And so that kept me pretty busy. So I needed to figure out how to have one kid sitting in a chair with my foot around it, somebody else on my knee, and then trying to provide modeling using core vocabulary. So that's my background. I'm currently a consultant that serves a large intermediate school district. So I work mostly with adults now and hopefully bring them to a place of doing great implementation. So you've already gotten these links from your handout. So hopefully if we were able to, I was able to see all of you, you would raise your hands and say, yes, I have heard of the Communication Bill of Rights. If not, you have a link in your note catcher to download it. We use this as pretty much the foundation of our work. We want people to recognize what a competent communicator is and recognize what it would be like to be able to fulfill or demonstrate all of these Communication Bill of Rights. And so when we think about vocabulary instruction, this is what we need the words for, right? It's not just about the words, it's about what the students and the individuals we serve are going to do with those words. So when we think about developing vocabulary for emergent communicators, and that's what we're mostly talking about now, they're going to be learning the meaning of the new words. We want them to understand how new words connect to known words. And then we want to use those words in flexible ways for multiple purposes and multiple functions. So many of you have probably seen or heard of the tiered vocabulary model. And so when we are talking today, we're thinking of tier 1 words as those everyday words familiar to most students, core vocabulary, sight words, and those are the ones we're going to be teaching explicitly and modeling. Those tier 2 words, we're going to be thinking about how we can talk about those words with the core vocabulary we currently have. And then tier 3 words, we're going to be thinking more about spelling them. So that's one of the things that we also, in this process, need to be thinking about the vocabulary we need to learn so that we can become literate. And that's a big piece of the training, is how do we connect it to text? I don't see any questions yet. So we often are all hearing now about robust vocabulary, instruction, like what that's going to look like, how are we going to think about it? And so we're going to begin with those tier 1 words with a long range goal of being able to express and describe tier 2 words. We're going to teach the meaning, the concept of the word in a varied context. We want to connect new words to known words. We're going to talk about being visual, words that are visibly represented. We're going to talk about the symbol and the word. We're going to do some comparing and contrasting. And our goal is for students to novelly generate the word in flexible ways. I have talked too much today already. So vocabulary learning considerations. We're going to be teaching vocabulary explicitly. We're going to support the teaching of that vocabulary by aided language input, showing the communicator what they could say. We're not going to show them what they have to say. So our goal is not compliance. Our goal is more show and tell. This is how you could do this. We're going to be demonstrating how communication works. We're going to consider the frequency of use. So we need to design lessons that have a high frequency of use. And we're also going to consider and acknowledge the motor planning that our students are going to be using to communicate. So 2 things that we want to address. Explicit vocabulary instruction should be a part of every AAC learner's intervention. So I was talking earlier today around a season when I explored 5 different early childhood curriculum to see what they had, what was part of it. Some were for general education and some were for special education, and none of them up till 5 had vocabulary instruction as a part of it. Now, I did find some kindergarten curriculum that did have specific vocabulary that was being taught, but again, it wasn't necessarily explicitly. So it's important that you continue to hear, we're doing this explicitly. It's not, hopefully by osmosis, our students are going to learn the words that are on their communication system. So explicit vocabulary instruction for beginning communicators and emergent literacy learners is what we're going to be talking about. Our goal is that our students would know the essence of a word, its functions, how and where to use it. One example we have is circumlocution, where we're kind of talking around the word. We're using the words we currently have access to talk about that word or describe that word. And that's one of the things that Karen Erickson talks about, use words to talk about words. The other thing that we hear a lot about right now is descriptive teaching, and how do we describe those words? So we're going to describe most important tier 3 words by using the words in tier 1 or spelling them. We're going to describe the tier 2 words with tier 1 core vocabulary words and begin to add or navigate some of those tier 2 words. And those tier 1 words are everyday words everywhere in every subject that we want our students to be able to use easily. So I'm going to talk briefly about the enhanced alphabet routine, and you have the article, you have the download for it. It was originally designed for general education. It has massive amounts of research behind it for strategies for early childhood educators. So that's what its design was. The goal was to teach recognition of a closed set of graphic symbols, letters, that can be represented in a variety of ways. It's really a beautiful model. The piece that I really enjoy is that it has multiple cycles to it that have been highly researched. And as you go through those cycles, you have a high frequency of use and opportunities to use the words that are being taught. It also associates the symbol with its functional use. So let me share with you, here's the article so you can download it. And probably the overriding purpose or why it works so well is it's a distributed practice instructional model. So you first introduce the word, and then you practice the word, and then you revisit the word as needed throughout the school year. And so in the past, we would have had most of us taught a word of the week, a core word of the week. And I remember the day that Dr. Karen Erickson came to present for us where I work, probably 5 or 6 years ago. And she introduced the idea of this distributed practice, this alphabet enhanced model, and doing a word of the day. Oh my goodness sakes. Everybody freaked out. They're like, you just tipped my, box over. I finally got to where I could do one a week. And so it was pretty traumatic for many. They're like, no, I just got it figured out. But this is why we're supporting this model. If we did a core word of the week, it would take us through most of the school year to have gotten through all the words. And what we know with the students we serve is they might have medical issues. They might be out in early childhood. They start whenever they turn 3 often. And so there's many, many issues that come into play on why doing a word of the week leaves out a lot of students. And it also means that a lot of the students, if they've missed the first 4 weeks or they missed 3 in the middle, they now have missed that week that we taught that core word. So here is another example. If we do, so say 35 to 40 words, we typically, when we're talking about explicit teaching of core words, we're talking about a small set of words that we can learn really well, that we can use to describe other words and use more powerfully as they're combined. We're not talking about 108, okay? A small set of words. You might be up to 50 or so before you move to another model or another approach. And so in this approach, you're going to teach each core word 5 times if we have, say, 40 words. So imagine then that even an additional set of those words might be taught 6 times. How much more powerful is that than 1 word a week? But we also have to have it a little bit simpler. It can't be as complicated as sometimes we have made a word of the week. So this is the routine. You choose a word. We're going to encourage you to choose a set of 5 words that interact with each other, a set versus a single word every day. We want them to all interact, which provides so many more opportunities for use. We're going to choose activities and props. We're going to choose core phrases to model or demonstrate. We're going to teach the word pretty explicitly. So we're going to, and we'll talk about that. And then we're going to connect it to text. Remember, I talked about the importance of literacy. And so here's a video that I'm hopefully going to share well. I hit all the right buttons, and it's for the explicit piece of the function of the word. And so we can take a look at that. You also have the link to this, so let's see if this will work for us.
Can you think of anything else we can open? A box? Let's open our box, okay? And I'm gonna open my box, and the first thing I have is a puzzle. I can open the box, not right now, later, okay? So I can open the box. Erin, can you open the box? Good. Erin, open. He opened the box. Okay, so that was our first thing. Our next thing is a house. And I open the doors. Where's the doors? There. Oh, and the roof. Look at the roof opens. And the doors open. Yeah. Open. And look. I can put Cameron, settle down. I can put the girl in our house and close the doors. Now it is not open. It's not open. Josh, can you open the house? already opened the house. I'm gonna close it now. Our next thing that we can open, Matthew, you're gonna love this one. We can open sprinkles or a container. And you know what else you can open? Your mouth. Can you all open your mouth? So I'm gonna open this container, and if you want some, you can open your hand. Can you show me all how you can open your hand? Cameron, show me an open hand. Or you can open mouth. Okay. So Aaron, what are you gonna open? Your hand or your mouth? Open your mouth. Okay. Open. Ready? Open.
Open.
And we can say, open up. Open up your mouth. Is that good?
Yes.
Cameron, what are you gonna open? Your hand or open your mouth?
Hand.
So tell me, open.
Open the hand.
Open the hand. Go. And Joshua, you wanna open up your hand or open up your mouth?
I could put it on the cap. Very good.
Josh, open hand or open mouth?
Open the hand.
Open the hand. I will put them in your hand. There you go. Okay, so that was another thing we could open. And you guys are all gonna know this next one too. Cameron.
What's that?
Well, what is it? What is it?
Coca-Cola.
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 Yeah. And I can open a pop or a Coke or water, but I am not going to open this because it's Miss Jen's. So I'm gonna not open it. I'm gonna leave it closed. Okay? And the other thing we have, this is the last one. We can open a book. We can open a book. Cameron, can you open the book? There. He,
Where's the sprinkles?
thank you. Sprinkles are all done. He opened our book. He opened our book.
So hopefully you saw some nice things happening there. The large core board that they use have symbols that you can remove. We encourage that to be used with those students that are already combining 2 or 3 words. Our students that are really at the single symbol phase, we pretty much don't leave the symbols on the large board. We just use it to model with. We find people take the symbols off and then they use them separately rather than the students have access to the entire language set that's available to them. So that would be our encouragement. So hopefully you saw that they were really demonstrating the functions of that word. And so again, the students that are emergent communicators, we brainstorm a set of words and the meaningful functions that you can demonstrate. So here's an example of moving from a core word of the week to a core word of the day. Many of you had multiple activities that you would have created, books and all kinds of things that you would use in that core instruction of that word of the week. Our encouragement is to take those and just separate them off into 5 different sets, because that's typically between 35 and 50 words are what most people are teaching explicitly. And so as a result, you can divide them up and mix them up so that the first time you go through it, you use, say, this first one here. The second time you use these, the third time you use these. So you don't really need to create a lot more if you were already doing a core word of the week. If you have students that are generating 2 and 3 word phrases, then we would encourage you to think about providing them with a student-friendly definition. We often find this with our kids that are upper elementary and junior high. We want them to start figuring out the definitions, the multiple ways you can move and use the word. And so this would be for those students that are still emergent, but also using some conventional communication strategies and supports. So this is what we want you to think about and consider is combining the words for those 5 days. So think about them strategically or systematically. So I was working with a team recently and they said, well, we were already given kind of a list of how to go through our core words and there's only 4. And so I just encourage them to take a look at the words that they were given and just expand it to a set of 5. Now we've got some early childhood teams that they only come 4 days a week. And so that worked perfectly for them to use only the 4 words at a time. Quick sip there. And so you're going to pick 1 to 2 of these words that your student already knows. And you may figure this out by progress monitoring, by what you're sharing in the classroom. Some people do some mini videotapes and then take a look at them and check off the core words that were used. Other people do, 2 or 3 10-minute observations, and we call it score the core. So they take the core board and check off every time that word is used. And so as a result, those are what we would consider the more known words. And then we're going to choose 3 more words that are fairly new, but we're going to combine those words as we present them. So here's an example of choosing those 5 words. Now, again, we've been providing a lot of training recently, and people are like, I can't do all 5. And so we just encourage them to start with 2, start with 3, make it work for you. We don't want more stress. We just want people to be doing more instruction that is explicit to the core words that they have available on their communication systems. And so here's an example. There's the core words. Here's some phrases that we started to build that included more than one of those core words. So if you think about want and more, want more, like more, not go more. And our goal and how we want you to think about it is if we've combined those core words multiple times during the week, they're getting access to so much more vocabulary, so many more opportunities to figure out what those words are, how we work with them, how they can be combined versus a single word. Then we're going to pick props. We know how powerful hands-on learning works. I was in early childhood, so I fully understand the nightmare of things in the classroom, of core symbols, of lots of objects and felt and all kinds of things, magnetic letters. But over time, our students truly learn what to do with them, how to use them, and how to respect them. But it does take time to teach them. So I would often use a lot of props. And when our families would want to give me another mug or an apple for my Christmas tree, I would ask for books. And I'd give them lists of props and books and things that they could give to the classroom. The next thing we're going to do is build the phrases around those core words. So we're going to brainstorm them. And this is the same example. We added some fringe here, but you're going to brainstorm them. We have a lot of teams now that are creating a Google Doc, and they'll put the 5 words and they'll let parapros, teacher assistants, whatever you call them, social workers, speech paths, whoever's doing it, to add words to it. Get creative. Some people that don't do a lot of tech, they just put up a wall chart for the next week. It's like they have it in the back of the room. Here's this week, here's the next week, and they begin to build those phrases. The goal is that we want our students to become flexible communicators, not rigid communicators. And so if we're too rigid, too compliant about what we provide, they're going to lock into those phrases rather than be flexible communicators. So here's an example. This is the communication purposes and functions chart that I use. But we want to also make sure that we're involving multiple functions of communication. Again, we prepare these ahead for a very specific reason, because I don't know about you, but when I was in the classroom, it was pretty crazy. It was pretty chaotic. I had lots of little ones running around. One would start crying, then three would start crying, and one would leave go out the door, and the other one would be at the sink. So we want to prepare ahead and make those lists available to ourselves so that we can just glance up rather than try to think through, oh, what were the phrases that I was using this week? The next thing we're going to do is teach a new word explicitly. So we're going to choose the word, and then okay, so let's see what criteria you used to. Okay, I will answer that in just a second. I will share this, and then the question is, what criteria do you use to determine if a word of the week has been fully introduced, acquired into your students' vocabulary? We are not thinking about, or our goal is not mastery. So we want to take a good look. We can do some progress monitoring. We can see what they're using on their communication systems. Our goal, again, is the introduction of the word and tons and tons and tons of practice, frequency of use, because what we know is we're going to be able to cycle through again and again and again. And what many people do is, if there's 4 or 5 words that they see most of the students knowing and using, then they might put them at the end of the list and put the other ones at the top. Right now, there is no research to tell us how to cycle through. So some people just start left to right, down the row. Some start in groups of 4 or 5 words that they just choose out of their core list. Others get creative. They choose them. They go through the list and choose them based on how those words interact with each other. But we don't have solid research on this is the best way to cycle through. The Enhanced Alphabet article has the research and why they chose the cycles they did. And so when we think about teaching it explicitly, we're going to introduce the new word, and it's a relationship to known words. We're going to show the word. We're going to identify each letter in the word. We're going to spell out the word. We're going to describe the icon, the characteristics of the icon. We're going to draw attention maybe to specific details in the icon. We're going to have them find the icon on a core board on their devices. If you use a wall-size core board, you're going to find where that icon is on that core board. We're going to model those phrases that we put together. And so we want that list close to where, if we're modeling on a large core board, if we're modeling on their devices, or a no-tech non-aided language core board. But we're going to be modeling those throughout the week. And we're going to teach the meaning, the concept of the word. And we're going to use different functions to talk about it: comments, questions, requests. We're going to compare and contrast. Many times, one of the strategies might be take 2 words that are opposites or that we can compare and contrast. And that's what we're going to work on as we're presenting those 5 words together. We're going to elaborate on new words, their functions, and their meanings in incredibly engaging activities. We want them to be interesting. So it says, will you modify the layout or color of the word? So I typically we don't use color coding for our words. Like some devices that we use, if they're already color coded, we leave them. This is what we found. And there's a study that talks about it, that the color coding really supports the adult rather than the students. Now, I have a couple caveats that I'll share. One of the things we found is when we have color-coded core boards, our students with ASD will often fixate on a color and then they only choose those colors. And so we are using pink today or we're using green today, and then they switch to a new color. So we find it a bit distracting. However, if it's already on the device and you use it, it's really not a big deal. But we do find it supports adults that are already language learners and language users more than our students as they're learning language. But you may have experienced something a little bit different. Then we're going to do some incredible, fun, interactive activities. So this is just an example. I had a picture, but I didn't have permission to share it, of this young man, and he was never interested. He didn't really like books. He, didn't really enjoy much of the vocabulary instruction activities because they didn't have any props. They had like a large core board, but nothing else. Well, we convinced the teacher to just try to provide the small book, to provide the big book, to provide the props and a core board. This picture was so fun. So here's this little young man, and he's probably 4, and he's got the book under one arm. He's got a whole bunch of the props under the other arm, kind of hanging out. He's already dropped one. He's up at the big core board. So he's got his book and he's pointing to the core board as she's talking about the book that they had just talked about with the words that he was learning. It was so fun. And the teacher's like, okay, fine, I'm doing props. That's it. So it was delightful to realize that as she took the risk in her classroom, that it really, really supported the students' learning. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect it to text. And that's incredibly important because your goal for every one of your students, and this is all your students have a right to be instructed in literacy. And I believe that very, very strongly. And so we want to connect them to text right away. And one of the things we do as we're talking about the words, and I said we were going to point out the letters, that we also want to directly point out letters in books. Some of the research that we've recently found is that students will typically look at the pictures. But if we do text referencing, so if we point out, oh my gosh, that's caps for sale, and C is the same, the first letter of Charlie's name or whatever, that then when they do this eye gaze technology assessment, they find that the students' eyes go to the letters as well as the pictures, not just the pictures. So we definitely want to be pointing out the words in the books that we're providing. So this is a sample lesson plan. And so as I talked about, you're going to choose the words, and our encouragement again would be sets of 5, sets of 3. Again, this is just to me being more strategic as those words interact with each other. Then we're going to choose our props. And so you can go through and choose what the activity is and the prop that goes with the activity. We're going to make a list of the phrases that you'll be modeling. Again, I encourage you to display these phrases, put them in your lesson plan, but also type them up and maybe hang them in your circle time or, however you start your day, hang them in activity areas. I always had a literacy station, which was a big puppet station that had all my books hanging on it and all my props. I had one there. Sometimes what I found a staff doing, which is really fun, they have a small core board that they wear on their lanyard. And so each week they would put the words they were doing and the phrases on that, like shrunk, so I could barely see them. They had young eyes, but that was also helpful. So they had it right with them so they could think about the phrases and be more creative in not getting too locked into a certain set of phrases or a certain word that just kind of fell off their tongue easier than others. And so again, we want all these pieces. Then we're going to think about the functions of communication that we're representing. So we're going to think about, do we have any of those phrases that represent a request? Do we have any phrases that involve seeking information or informing or commenting? So, or being directive. We want to make sure, again, that communication is flexible and not locking them into specific phrases. And we never want to require a student to create a certain phrase. That I do not find that helpful. And I find that it causes a lot of, they get really stuck really quickly in those phrases. We also do not endorse or support hand over hand. We believe in the teams that I work with that it is not useful. And so we typically don't support it. We would rather model, right? To get where we're going rather than a compliance model. So I have provided you with a core vocabulary explicit instruction lesson plan, and it you download it and it forces you to make a copy. And so we have about 20 minutes. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to begin to make a lesson. So let me pop out of here. And this is your interactive workbook. Excuse me. I have talked too much today. And in the workbook, so you have the title, you have the links that I provided, you have the routine, you have the lesson plan. It reminds you of the steps that you're going to take. And so as you take the first step, it then gives you a place, excuse me, I'm going to take a drink here, to begin building your lesson plan. So you should be able to type in here. I gave all the permission, so hopefully it's working. You're going to choose your new word. Hopefully you're going to do it in a set of 5. And so here we have that reminder of the functions, a reminder of picking the words in groups, and then what that looked like. So you're going to choose your 5 words. Then we have that example of the props. You're going to then choose your props. So you may, in this setting, you may not choose all your activities. You may choose one word to fill out all of this, but you know you have these other 4 words, a set of words that you're going to be using. Then you're going to begin to build your phrases. You're going to teach the word explicitly, so I want you here to begin scripting how you would teach the new word explicitly. What icon characteristics are you going to attend to? Those kinds of things. And then you're going to choose the text and you're going to put that here. So I want you to open up your interactive workbook, and I want you to go down to slide 8 and begin to do that. So I'm going to let you on your own. We'll, let's see, so I'll give you 10 minutes to begin to build it out. I also will be paying attention to the questions and to the chat. So if questions come up, I tend to be somebody that says, well, I'll do it later. My encouragement is to do it right now, right? To get a feel for what it looks like to build this lesson plan. Okay, so you're going to start with 8. So go ahead, and I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do it, and then we'll come back together and see what you thought. So I've been giving people access, so I will continue to, I have it as an editor, but I will continue to give access if it still doesn't seem to work. So is there anyone that's been able to access it? I know that I saw some people were in it. So it looks like some are able to, it forces you to make a copy. So you have to make a copy and then you should be able to access it. Okay. So it looks like people that are on their laptops are able to access it and type in it. So it looks like it may be due to it not being. I am so sorry. I had a lot of people tested and it seemed to be working. So you've had a little time to try it. And so I think what we'll do is go through the interactive workbook and just talk through some of the things that you might have written. So we'll keep looking at the chat and the Q&A. But so let's take a look at the slideshow. So our first goal is to choose those 5 words. And this is, we're looking at how many phrases we can do together that will then strategically allow high frequency of use of those words. So I'm guessing that probably no one had a hard time choosing the words. You might be thinking, is there a certain order I should do them in? These 5 first, and there really isn't. So you can kind of choose what makes sense to you. And then choosing your props. And I would encourage you to think about what's already in your classroom, and then think about things families might choose to send in. It doesn't have to be all fancy like these are. We would make cutouts and put them on tongue depressors, lots of different ways to explore the props. And building the phrases is probably one of the most important things, because you want to build them in a way that you'll remember them, that aren't too complicated, but that are also flexible. Thinking about the functions, teaching the word explicitly, scripting what that is so that you have kind of a general way that you go through it for each word, and then connecting the text. Does anybody have any questions that were able to access it? I do apologize. I did have several of my colleagues try to figure it out, and so I do apologize for that. So I'm going to share a little bit more of the slide deck, which you have access to. So a colleague of mine created a work group. It was called Maker Mania. And so we were doing core word of the day. So she created slide decks for a very large amount of words. And so in the note catcher, it has a link to it. Oh, goodness. How many protections can we have? Let's see if this will open. So it allows you to make a copy, because we don't want to like mess everybody's slide deck up. But this is what she created with multiple colleagues of hers, and she's continued to create it. And she has a Facebook group, core word of the day. You should be able to find it pretty easily. But here's the word. Here's a fun meme. Here's an idea of what the adults will do versus what the students will. This is our core board, but it shows you where it is on all these core boards. The phrases that are being built, that can be built around it. So you can see just a variety of different things in the slide deck that is really helpful. So when people are trying to figure out what exactly should I be doing, what does this look like, it's a very, very helpful resource. I also included in the slide deck, how are we doing here? Pretty good. A core word of the day instructional routine that's just like a quick one, so you can download that. And this is just a sample of what you might be thinking about as you build that vocabulary lesson. What I want you to know is this is not like built in stone. We have lots of people using it really flexibly, and that you can kind of bring your own flavor into it, or the teams you're working with. I have a lot of teams that have multiple people on their team. And so sometimes the SLP will be the one to do the core introduction on Monday. Sometimes the social worker will do a social communication group, and she'll end up doing the core word of the day for Tuesday. So we have different people picking up different roles, because it is about a 10-minute lesson. We're not talking about multiple 30 minutes to do this. It's about 10 minutes. And so a lot of people in my teams are like, I can do that. Once I get the model, let me do that. So it's been fun to watch different people take on different roles. This is Tar Heel Reader. Hopefully all of you have seen this or heard about it. I would encourage you to take a look at it. But it is now soon, so it's just an incredible site. It's soon to become Monarch Reader by Building Wings. So the team at UNC Chapel Hill that originally created Tar Heel Reader for those students that did not have any reading materials. There was no literacy materials for those emergent communicators that were older. So it's been growing for years. Now it's being transitioned to Building Wings. They're going to have, my understanding, so it will be coming out soon, they will have the regular version, which is free. So they'll still have a free version, but they will also be building a premium version to use some of the books that they have in the past been using that will now be part of that. So we're real excited about that to unfold. So I have a question for the phrases. I've always learned to model simple but grammatically correct phrases. How would you reconcile this with phrases such as not like? So I want you to think about your emergent communicators, your either young children or young communicators. You can do it a couple ways. You can use verbally grammatically correct phrase, and then I would point to the two words like not like or like go. And so they're still hearing grammatically correct phrases, but you're specifically drawing their attention to a single word as you say it. So, you know, I like to go. And then you would look at the core board and do like go. So you're saying the word that's not on the core board or that helps it be grammatically correct. But at the same time, you're bringing their attention to that single word. So we want them to know that that's the word and that's the spelling of the word. I hope that helps. Things to remember, we're going to teach and model. It needs to be interactive, engaging, and rich in context. Multiple ways and multiple contexts. So we want them understanding the essence of the word, and we're combining new words with known words. Here's some popular resources on practical AAC, school year of core vocabulary, April year of core vocabulary, and school year of core vocabulary. They use quite a few more words. Again, you want to think about the power of a smaller set of words that they can use for multiple purposes. Boardmaker Core First Learning is incredible. And I gave you a link to download their books. Sometimes they move them around a bit to different websites internationally or in the United States, but they're all downloaded for you in one of our links. Assistive Core Word Classroom is incredible. You do have to sign in, but they still, it is free. So they do a beautiful job of supporting core word instruction. And this is something that was delightfully shared years ago by Carol Zangari. Teaching core words isn't quick and it isn't easy. Core language instruction isn't simple and it isn't always intuitive, which is true. What it is, though, is powerful. It's teaching kids to fish for themselves rather than serving them up a plate. It's laying a foundation so that they will ultimately be able to say what they want at any point in time. It's worth it. Let's see. How do you adapt these lessons when you have a small group with different SGDs whose core word pages may be set up differently? So we do a couple things. We do print a copy of their core page so that we have their device, but we also have their core page. If their core words are not on that page, then we also create a link so that we can see how to get to that, especially for parapros or other people helping to model. We don't necessarily in those classrooms use the large core board for instruction. I prefer that, but that may not be the case. And then we would have those core words circled or highlighted somehow on the desk next to the student. And you would choose those core words that everybody has. So you would start there looking at all of the devices or the page sets and what core words can we begin to teach, and then draw their attention to it on their own systems. But we always have a hard copy, no tech for the page set that the student has. Hopefully that makes a bit of sense. And I have 5:56 and I am open to questions if you haven't already shared your question. I also on the note catcher have, let me find the note catcher. So on the note catcher at the bottom, I have a place for Q&A. For the next few weeks, I will check that to see. So feel free to write some questions in there if you'd like, and I'd be happy to answer them. Because I know I leave somewhere and go, oh, why didn't I ask that question? And so I would like to at least make that available to you. You also have my email. So in terms of vocabulary instruction for families, hopefully you have seen the Stepping Stones to AAC by Dr. Zangari, Tabby Jones-Wolber, Rachel Langley. They created this incredible resource. It's being posted in lots of places. I will add it to the note catcher. It's really, really powerful. I tend to create newsletters for families. So I might share some of the resources, the activities, the book that we used, and the set of phrases for sure, so that they can see, oh, this is how the phrases we're using. I do it quite simply. Sometimes we do it in Canvas. Sometimes we just do it in a Word or a Google Doc. Oh yeah, Stepping Stones is excellent. I'm glad to hear you say that. It was a massive love labor of the women that did it, and I find it incredible too. Any other questions or thoughts? So I will stop sharing. Yes, I believe the recording continues to be available. Jim's responding right away. So one question, any advice on how to encourage the shift from requesting to commenting in the classroom? So we do a lot of work with the Communication Bill of Rights. And with our older kids, we even have them pick the right that they would like to learn more about or get better at. And so one of the things we do is talk about how will they be able to participate or demonstrate the Communication Bill of Rights if they only know how to request. So we have people think about the Buckham and Morinda kind of participation model that says we're planning for today, and we're starting here, but we're also planning for tomorrow. So what do we need to give them for their future versus what they currently are being given? And feel free to write that in one of the questions, and I'll see if I have some more resources for you. If there's a resource that I talked about that did not, I didn't include, please, again, put that in the questions. So one of the questions about telling them something is wrong, we, depending on the page set, will either put it on the front page or the very next page about either I need your help or very specifically, something's wrong. And we teach them that explicitly, and we give them lots of examples of if something's wrong, we give them a way to say that. Thank you so much for the good feedback. We find it a really incredible strategy, and we connect it very closely to the emergent literacy strategies from Project Core. So it's just an additional strategy that we use.
Marlene, there is one question in the chat. Can you see the chat?
I can, yeah.
It was the
Which-
question regarding paras. Sometimes our paras.
Okay, so I share a couple of things. So Jane Farrell has on her website some information about hand over hand and why we're discouraging people from using it. Rachel Langley has a really beautiful article about thinking about healthy prompts, if we're even going to use that word. So we talked to our parents about a couple things. Number one, we touch our kids too much. We put them at risk for abuse. We have, I think it's 28% of victims of violent crimes are people with special needs. And so we talk about how we're preparing them for the future by not touching them and just supporting them in other ways. We also talk about what our PTs and OTs tell us is that by doing hand over hand, it isn't really useful. So imagine yourself being in rehab and you're on your phone or you're watching a video and somebody's manipulating your shoulder, right, to get it to work better, and you're not even paying any attention. So we need cognitive engagement when we're interacting with our kids, and we typically don't have it if we're using hand over hand. But it's hard to break, believe me, because we've been taught it for so long. But both of those articles would be helpful, and I have just made a note to add them to the note catcher. Anything else that I might have missed? I'm so grateful for your participation. It's absolutely lovely. Is there anything else I missed? Let's see.
I didn't see any other questions. I think you got them all.
Oh, good. Okay.
All right. Did you have any other closing remarks, or are you ready to finish
Nope,
up?
I think I'm all set. Hopefully, if you have questions, let me know through the note catcher or email me. But thank you so much for joining and participating. I think it's a wonderful strategy, and I hope you'll be able to use it well.
All right. Thank you, Marlene, so much for presenting again with another wonderful presentation. For anyone in attendance, Marlene has presented for us a number of times. Those are available on our on-demand page if you'd be interested in seeing more. For those of you looking to earn ASHE CEUs for today's session, you will want to be sure to complete the assessment. I've put that link in the chat. I'll put it in there one more time. It will also come in the follow-up email that will come tomorrow at 4 p.m. Central Time. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and have a great day.
Bye.